All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to UNR Poli Sci in Exile. I'm joined as always with Dr. Nick Seltzer. How are you, Dr. Seltzer?
I'm doing pretty good, Dr. Hartshorn. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Nick, what do we have on tap for today? What are we talking about?
Well, today we're going to talk about your summer class, Political Science 408E, Labor, Economy, and Protest. I would like to hear all about that.
Yeah, sure thing. So this is a very exciting one. As with a lot of our summer classes, this is a class that I like teaching, sort of a passion project. And this one is going to look at all the times when people engage in some kind of contentious politics, right? Where people are getting together and making claims, usually of the state. And we're going to think about all the ways in which people do that around economic issues. A lot of times when we think about economic protests, we think about them as some kind of left wing or working class protests, but that's not always the case. In your home state, in the great state of California, for instance, we have a lot of economic based protests that have been properly coded as like middle class protests. People upset about their taxes and how their taxes are getting used. We have boycotts, we have strikes. We have a lot of different ways that people can use economic language, economic framing, economic motivations to do protest. So that's what we're going to talk about this summer. It's going to be in summer session 2. It's going to be online only. So wherever you are, wherever students are, they can take this class, and we should have some Zoom based fun with it. I'm hoping.
Well, I have a follow up question for you. Very often you hear arguments that some popular movement, uh, while not appearing to make any pretense about an economic grievance, right, are ultimately argued to be economic in nature, right? How can you tell the difference? What if a economic protest is not does not identify as an economic movement or an economic protest? How do you know the difference? How
Yeah,
do you know
that's a
when you see
fascinating
one?
question. That's a great question, and it's really hard, right? And we can see this all around the world. We can see that groups are labeled as economic-based protests, even if they themselves don't use that argument. And you'll also see the converse. You'll see groups that say, "No, we're making an economic grievance," and people will come back and say, "No, that is a race-based grievance, or it's an identity-based grievance, or it's an ethnic grievance, or something like that," right? So it can be really hard to disentangle these. So, like I do with a lot of political science, with political economy classes, I try to think about this from the perspective of identities, which can be really powerful motivators. Looking also at institutions. What institutions are people making claims of? What institutions are they
Hmm.
building up, right? Are they building class based solidarities? Are they building economic based strategies? So I think about it from the idea of from institutions, of identities, and also ideas. What ideas are they grappling with as a topic? Which is one of the ways we can try to get some leverage over what type of protest we're dealing with. And it's certainly possible that protests could have a lot of different origins.
This is just fascinating. Is it ever the case that a economic protest movement is ultimately rooted in the advancements of the economic interests of other groups? Like, for example, tax cuts,
Yeah.
which
Yeah, that's a
may
great.
predominantly go to a an economic elite.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an interesting thing that we see in economic based protests is we do see people sometimes making very specific economic claims that could potentially be not in what we would think of as their interest, right? So sometimes we see folks protesting taxes and actually they're net beneficiaries of a tax system and they are arguing to change it. So our kind of rationalist assumptions about the way political economy works, they don't hold up in those instances. We really need to bring in some of these identitarian components, some of these ideational components, or some kind of bounded rationality through institutions to explain why people might be getting up in arms, whether literally or figuratively, about something that ultimately we look at and say, hey, that's not actually going to make you any richer or any better off. So that's tough.
Well, Dr. Hartshorn, when is your class this summer? Yeah, maybe I want to know because I think I want to drop in. This sounds just like absolutely fascinating.
Well, we'd be excited to have you. It's going to start in summer session 2. That's July 13th. And the class is going to be partly synchronous and partly asynchronous. So there's going to be some online components, some individual components. So it's going to be meeting
Mm.
on the web, whenever to a certain extent. But it's going to run from mid-July through the end of the summer session. And if folks have more questions, they can always reach out to me or reach out to the department to find out more about the class.
Ooh, wee, that sounds like fun. I'm session one, so maybe I'll see you there.
That sounds great. Thanks so much, Nick.
See you later, Ian.